Bleacher Report lists the Chicago Bulls' best trade assets and players that are untouchable on the Chicago Bulls. Today, we're going to talk about it and ask the question, should any Bulls be untouchable in trade talks depending on the level of the deal? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Then we're going to talk about the reasons to love and or hate the Chicago Bulls offseason as they are completely done now with the offseason moves. We're getting into all that plus the mailbag right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host, Terry Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. Now, before we get into the content today, though, I got a shameless plug. I will be competing in Player Choices Debate League, the PCL, today, going down at 6:45 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:45 p.m. Chicago time. Make sure you guys tune in with that. The link will be in the description to Player Choices channel. Make sure you guys tune in. It's going to be fun. If I win this debate, I move into the Final Four. I'm on a streak of winning 3 debates in a row. We're going to see if we can make it lucky number 4 today against Dion from Ohio, so make sure you guys are tuned in for that. It's before the Bears game, so if you're also a Bears fan, we'll be finished and done long before the Chicago Bears game, so make sure you guys tune in. With that being said, let's go ahead and get back into the content for today. So Bleacher Report had an article in which they ranked the Chicago Bulls' best trade assets and then ranked players that are untouchable. We're going to talk about each one of those lists. I'm going to ask that question. Should anybody be untouchable with this Bulls on this Bulls team in the right deal, right? We'll talk about players that I have labeled as kind of situationally unavailable, but we'll get into that and break that down. So they have the Bulls' best trade assets listed as Patrick Williams, Ayo Dosunmu, and Torrey Craig. Mainly due to Patrick Williams as far as him having a positive swing in his career, last season, especially in that month of December. Patrick Williams, a player that at the bare minimum has already shown himself to be in the NBA as a solid defender and a three-point shooter that not really great volume, but a 40% three-point shooter, and those are assets that are going to keep you around on an NBA team. At the bare minimum, Patrick Williams can fit in and start on just about any roster in the NBA, well, any makeup of a roster in the NBA, because he doesn't take a lot of shots. He can still get you 10 points. He gets you really good defense. But, of course, we know that there are shortcomings that I think are kind of maximized here in Chicago because you drafted him 4th overall that maybe another team couldn't, you would easily overlook. On top of that, yes, he has a $90 million contract, but when you look at that, that's about to be mid-level exception money. So I kind of understand where they have Patrick Williams as one of the best trade assets. I don't necessarily agree with that. The next player is the one that I agree with is if the Bulls wanted to make him available, which they should not right now, it would be the best trade asset for the Chicago Bulls, and that's Ayo Dosunmu. I have a video about 2-3 weeks ago, maybe even a month ago at this point, in which I said that if the Bulls were to make Ayo Dosunmu available in trade talks, he would become one of the best trade assets on the market when you factor in youth, the contract, and the ceiling that he still has, that he still, still some time left on the potential of that ceiling as well. Ayo Dosunmu could be one of the best value contracts in the NBA over the next 2 seasons. When you look at him making less than $7 million each of the next 2 seasons, and when you look at the production that he brought, especially as a starter last season, 15.4 points per game, 3.4 rebounds, 5.1 assists, and 41% shooting from 3 in 37 games as a starter last year. Yes, Ayo Dosunmu does offer that would be a great trade asset if the Bulls were to make him available. Again, I don't think that they should at this point. I think we don't know who Josh Giddey's going to be yet for the Chicago Bulls team. You know he has chemistry with Kobe White. You've seen him grow and develop. And while some Bulls fans have said, hey, well, you got to move Ayo because he doesn't have star-level potential, I don't give a damn about that. He's shown an ability to continue work on his game and progress. And yeah, he was thrust into a point guard role that Ayo Dosunmu was always best as a combo guard. Now that he's able to play a little bit of both of those, well, it was last season, we got to see the best out of Ayo Dosunmu, and he had growth as a shooter last year as well. And I think when you factor in the perimeter defense that Ayo Dosunmu brings, he's not as versatile a defender, at least not yet, as Alex Caruso was, right? So I know he's stepping into replacing the Alex Caruso role in a lot of ways. He doesn't get the deflections. He's not as switchable yet because Alex Caruso could switch 1 through 4, but Ayo Dosunmu is still one of the better perimeter defenders on the Chicago Bulls right now, period. And so all those things, yeah, he would be a great trade asset, but just because he would be doesn't mean that he should be available. And then lastly, Torrey Craig. And much like I've said in previous videos, they point out in this article the fact that contenders are probably going to call about Torrey Craig at some point this season. He has a very affordable contract at $2.8 million, which is extremely easy to match on top of that. And he was a 39% three-point shooter last year, something that kind of, not huge volume, but again, much like with Patrick Williams, right, but at a much lesser contract, older too, is that Torrey Craig is a player that has shown over his career he can fit in with stars. He can play well off those stars. He's a solid shooter, even better when he's playing off those stars, and a really solid defender that can guard multiple positions at the small forward or power forward as well. So, yeah, I do expect people to call about Torrey Craig at this trade deadline, and the Bulls better damn well answer those calls and move Torrey Craig if you're getting offered anything, especially multiple second-round picks. Move the motherfucker. But, so I agree with that part of it. Now, as far as players that they have listed as untouchable in this article, they have Josh Giddey, Kobe White, and Modest Bucilis listed as untouchable. And I agree with those, right? I think that Josh Giddey is untouchable right now, and he's in the area that I have as situationally untouchable, right? Is the fact that you just got him. You want to see what he's going to look like before you extend him, and you want to take a look at that. And so, yeah, I don't think the Bulls are going to be looking to take any calls on Josh Giddey right now because they just got him. They're trying to see how he fits, and they're trying to see how he can help change the play style of this offense for the Chicago Bulls, especially with his rebounding, helping the Bulls get out in transition, things like that. Kobe, that goes without saying. Kobe White is the player who extended his game the most last season, second and most improved player of the year voting. You're trying to see how he can grow as a scorer. Yeah, you've made a move with bringing in Josh Giddey that's going to take the ball out of his hand some, but you're hoping that helps him grow as a scorer as well. And especially if this Bulls team is getting more possessions because they're playing quicker, Kobe White's still going to have the ball in his hands, quite a bit as well, but, probably not as much as Josh Giddey. But yeah, I agree with that. Like as far as untouchable in the sense of situationally untouchable, right? And I'll explain what that means here in a second. And then they have Modest Bucilis. Yeah, the Bulls aren't going to look to move Modest Bucilis by any stretch of the imagination right now. I just don't think that they do because, listen, he's your highest draft pick, the second highest draft pick ever since you've taken over this team. Patrick Williams is the highest at number 4. And this is a guy who had top 5 in the draft potential. And so you want to try to see what that's going to turn into. I don't think you should look to move Modest Bucilis anytime over the next 3-4 years probably because you want to give him that time to grow and develop, round out his game, things like that. Now, the bigger question here is, should any Bulls be untouchable? And that's why I said situationally untouchable, right? And the way that I look at that is saying that, if somebody calls if for some reason some disgruntled star, an absolute star, not a questionable star, not an aging star, a star that's kind of right around still their prime becomes available, yeah, I think that at that point you may consider that. But then again, if you do make a move for a star and have to trade out most of your assets now, what are they coming back to this team? What are they going to play with, right? So that's the thing that plays into it as well. But a lot of fans are going to ask that question. Wait a second, Hayes, we're a team that won 39 games. Our wins have gone down every single season. We're projected at this point by a lot of people to win 30 or less games this season. Should anybody be untouchable really on the Chicago Bulls? And that's why I created the label situationally untouchable, because I don't think you shouldn't be looking to move these guys. But then again, a good to great front office is going to keep their ear to the ground. And you never know what deal could pop up. Now, the Bulls have other players that they can move before then, especially to match salaries, and Nikola Vucevic, Zach LaVine, right? Those guys, veterans, and Torrey Craig, those type of guys, Lonzo Ball's contract as an expiring contract. All those things should be ahead of the list as far as trying to package those assets. If somebody that you just want to bring into this team and you're able to facilitate a deal should come before. But if a team is calling up and saying, hey, yeah, we'll take Zach LaVine's contract. We'll take Lonzo Ball as an expiring to help match this, right? Well, we'll take that as well. We want a heavily protected first at least, but we also want Patrick Williams. We feel like Patrick Williams is a little bit younger of a guy. We want him because if Zach does leave in 2 years, if Lonzo just turns out not to be nothing for us and you end up keeping your first round pick, we at least get the guy in Patrick Williams. I think the Bulls should listen to those deals. They should still explore those type of deals. But, ultimately it comes down to, and, we had a voicemail on this yesterday from Brian Washington. And I think that, I made this point there is that getting win-now talent takes future assets, or it takes young talent now. And the Bulls are at a place right now that you have to ask yourself, what star adding to this roster dramatically ups the ceiling of the Bulls to the point where now you're looking at it and saying, hey, we're cool with giving up this future asset. We're cool with giving up this future first. We're cool with giving up, Kobe White. There's not many of that, because where the Bulls are right now, that ceiling. Like we're trying to get to a playoff team. If we were a team that had been on a playoff run a playoff series, maybe got eliminated in the second round after winning 2 games or pushing into game 7, that's where you're kind of more in that area, in that place where that types of stuff makes sense. So that's what you got to ask yourself. But, overall, I'll say this. The Bulls right now are in a place where development is still the best option for the Bulls, both for the future and for the now. You want to develop the talent that you have here, and if you're able to develop that talent, that's what's going to get you to the place that you ultimately want to be, but that takes time, and I know that's something that the fans don't want to see because we just wasted 3 years of watching this team after making win-now moves, not really go anywhere, and that's a factor in this as well. You cannot deny that factor, and that's something that, the front office is going to have to learn from those mistakes, and through that, it may come through, and I've said it before, many other Bulls content creators have said it, the Bulls are almost at the same place right now that they would have been had they just kept their young talent and their draft picks instead of making the move for Nikola Vucevic. Maybe you still sign Lonzo Ball in the following offseason, right? Maybe you still do that. Maybe you then don't get DeMar, but I think this Bulls team would have still been right around that same place, and that's what sucks about all this, and that's why development is still the key thing. Regardless of anything else, you want to develop your talent. Then, after developing that talent, you want to then take a look at maybe moving some of those guys, things like that. So then you're not necessarily giving up as many firsts either as the Bulls had to do to bring that team together. And we'll see, has the front office really learned from that? That's a question I don't have the answer to right now. All right, moving into the next topic, man, the Bulls offseason. What's the love about the Bulls offseason? What's the hate about the Bulls offseason? I think those things kind of go hand in hand, right? The Bulls now, for the most part, are done. I don't even see the Bulls making any more camp moves. We're 15 days away from the opening of training camp, a little over 2 weeks exactly away from training camp opening for the Chicago Bulls. And I'm excited about the opening of training camp. We've talked a lot about the storylines, the position battles, all those things that are going into training camp for the Bulls. But what is to hate or love about the Chicago Bulls offseason? And I think that comes down to this, is that the Bulls at least picked a direction, right? Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to agree with that direction, but they picked one. They decided to go younger with their roster. They decided to kind of focus more on development. When you factor in the coaching acquisitions that they made as well, those are coaching changes that you can see are a big part, development being the focus there. So you got that. You got Josh Giddey in here for Alex Caruso, right? You extended Patrick Williams now because DeMar DeRozan is gone. So now you're looking at, hey, Pat, now you don't have that excuse anymore of DeMar being here. How do you step up your game after that, right? You moved on from DeMar DeRozan, who was a free agent and could have left for nothing. You did get Chris Duarte and 2 second-round picks back for that, so cool. You got that back. Yeah, you could have gotten a pick swap had you been able to take Harrison Barnes' contract on. You hard capped yourself after the acquisition of Jalen Smith. It is what it is when it came down to that. But got a couple of seconds. We got Chris Duarte. Chris Duarte still a young player that has some things to prove himself as well. So, listen, all of those, we still got Nikola Vucevic here. We still got Zach LaVine here. We still got Torrey Craig here. These are other pieces that could be moved by this trade deadline to get you even more assets. But like I said, in picking that direction, that's also what is left to hate about the Chicago Bulls all season, in the sense that you didn't get as many assets back that most teams, that great teams, would have gotten in situations like that. You just did not. A lot of teams, great front offices, would have gotten at least some seconds. Can we get a couple of seconds back for Alex Caruso, right? As well as Josh Giddey, right? The Patrick Williams contract extension for $90 million. Yeah, I get it. Where the Bulls are and where they're going, you want to maintain young assets, so they want to see that development. But again, I'm not one that's too down on the deal, but I can understand why people are down on it. You didn't get that first round pick in the DeMar DeRozan trade, and overall, you just moved too late on every deal that you did. The Andre Drummond, you got offered 2 second-round picks for Andre Drummond. You didn't take him. He ends up leaving for nothing in the offseason. You could have definitely gotten more back for DeMar DeRozan had you moved him at the trade deadline and made this decision. And maybe even your first-round pick this year would have been better if you would have made that decision. I understand the rumors of the mandate from the ownership to push for the play-in or whatever else it is. Yes, all those things are there, but still, you decided not to do that. And that is the biggest lesson that has to come from this front office over this. Stop waiting so late to move on your assets. And you could be in a much better place as far as going towards your rebuild. So I think that's overall, like, it's a duality thing. Now, other things that the Bulls have done this offseason that I do like. The Kenny Lofton Jr., I like that signing, right? I really do. The E.J. Liddell signing, I like that signing because of what they are. These aren't signings to the main roster. These are signings to bring players into your G League system that have shown a little bit of promise that you're hoping that you can develop something into, and then maybe going into next season, maybe after a trade, whatever, they can move over and be contributors for. So I like that, again, as continuing that theme of development being the focus of the Chicago Bulls. I like that aspect of it, right? The THT signing, this is a player that's averaged 10 points per game at the NBA level, and you're bringing him in on an Exhibit 10 deal. It's probably, unless another team picks him up, going to turn into a G League deal again. Again, that helps out, that type of thing. So, the Jalen Smith contract as well. I think that the Jalen Smith signing is such a great signing at less than the mid-level exception, and he can end up being your starting center. Maybe not this year, maybe next year, whatever it is. So all those things, there are some good, there's some bad. There's some things to like, there's some things to hate. There's all those type of things with the Bulls offseason. But the key thing that's going to bring this all together is, does it work? How many of these moves work? And that's something we may not have the answers to this season. That's something to look out for going forward. Now, with that said, it is Sunday. That means it's mailbag day. Let's go ahead and get into these voicemails for today. This one's from Reginald.
Hey, this is Reginald from Columbus, Georgia. Earlier video, you posed a question about which Bull has the highest ceiling, or who might develop to be the best player on the team 3 years from now. And in my opinion, I think it's going to be Io Sumo. And I know some guys are probably thinking Io's not going to be a 30-8-4 type of guy, and I agree. But what I've noticed about him is that his game has always been improving, not just since he got to the league, but even in college. So I'm looking at a guy who's going to continue to develop his shooting, passing, his defense, his ball handling. His IQ is going to go higher and higher with the more experience he gets. And with that being the case, we're going to be looking at a two-way player who can guard guards and small forwards alike, and who doesn't have a problem being in the starting lineup or coming off the bench. He's a high IQ type player who has, the best quality of a lot of players that are well respected today. We can look at Alex Caruso, we can look at Marcus Smart, we can look at Bruce Brown. We got a couple of guys who just like a championship team would love to get their hands on. And while I have no doubt Kobe is going to be more consistent scorer, he's going to be more consistent passer, he's going to be a better player overall when it comes to offense. But will a team be willing to give multiple first-round picks for him to make him a part of their championship team? I doubt it. I think Io fits that bill perfectly. But what's your opinion? Thanks.
Io DeSumo being the Bulls' best player in the next 3 years. I like the way that you attack that, right? And I think that, like I said, Kobe White is probably the safe bet here. Modest Bucilis, I think, is another safe bet, being he's a rookie. And by that third year, you're hoping that he's going to make that leap, maybe even before then. But Io DeSumo, in the way that he works, the way that he's grown his game, his defense, right? Because he has a high floor because of defense already, right? The way that he is in transition. I like the idea of that. Now, here's what I'll say. If Io DeSumo is the Bulls' best player in 3 years, the question that I still have to that is he the best player because Modest didn't work out? Is he the best player because Kobe didn't take another step? Is he the best player because Patrick Williams didn't take his game in another step? Did Dalen and Julian Phillips end up being busts? Did the Bulls not make good draft selections over the next 3 years? All those things are a factor into that as well. But, I mean, if you want to bet on Io DeSumo to be that because of the floor, the high floor that he has, I can't really knock you for that, brother. Like, Io DeSumo is a dog. And I don't know if he's ever going to be looked at as the best player on a team, but he can be many people's favorite player on the team. And maybe even the reason why you have a lot of flexibility in how you build your roster, because Io's now shown the ability to play either guard position. He's played a lot of wing last season as well. So, he adds a versatile piece for you off your bench. The question is where are the Bulls then if Io DeSumo is your best player in 3 years, which again is something that we don't have the answer to, but your logic there is sound. And, I guess we'll see. And somebody else left a comment on that as well. I was kind of interested when I saw that. So I guess overall we'll see. We'll see where we are in 3 years. Yeah. All right, let's move into the next voicemail that we have today. This one's from R-Dub.
What's the deal, Hayes? R-Dub here. Sitting here thinking about the past couple of years with Billy Donovan and Patrick Williams and Torrey Craig. And I was just thinking to myself, like, you know what? I don't know if anybody's pointed this out, but whoever the starting forward is in Billy Donovan's offense, that starting power forward always suffers when it comes to scoring. They always have, like, I don't know why. I don't know if it's just Billy's scheme or how he has the starting power forward, but we all noticed that once Patrick Williams went to the bench, he started, he had more production offensively. And we all thought, well, it's less pressure on him. So he feels like he's going against the backup so he can go ham kind of thing. But I don't think that's the case. I'm starting to think that no matter what, no matter who is in that starting offense, the power forward will always suffer when it comes to offense. Let me know what you think about this. If I'm crazy, hey, just say I'm crazy. And it's hard to, I didn't say it before.
Okay, so I got to start this off by debunking something. This is something that a lot of Bulls fans have said over the years that just isn't true. So the thought process that Patrick Williams has been better off the bench, he hasn't. Because, again, he still plays power forward, but also his mentality is still the same. In his career coming off the bench, Patrick Williams has averaged 8.1 points per game, 3 rebounds, 1 steal, and 1 assist. As a starter, Patrick Williams has averaged 9.7 points per game, 4.2 rebounds, 1 steal, almost a block per game, and 1.3 assists per game. So, unfortunately, like I said, I think our expectations are what change when we see Patrick Williams coming off the bench. So when he scores 9, we're like, oh, yeah, it's a more impactful 9 when it really isn't. Patrick Williams basically has the same production as a starter as he does coming off the bench. And that may be a sign for concern or promise, however you look at it, right? If you're able to maintain the same production coming off the bench, I mean, maybe you're looking at that as a more impactful thing, but he's also averaging about the same minutes. And even last season, Patrick Williams actually averaged 9.3 points per game and 3.4 rebounds per game coming off the bench. So again, very similar to starting level numbers. I think the latter part of what you said is what this all comes down to a little bit more, is that the way that Billy Donovan so far in his offensive system has used the power forward, they're just kind of out there in the corner waiting for threes. Now, you get ones like Javonte Green was a lot more aggressive at attacking closeouts, going after rebounds, which got him dunks because of his athleticism and things like that, which we saw a little bit from Patrick Williams in December of last year. But the thought process that Patrick Williams is better coming off the bench just has not been true, not by analytically, not by stat production, not by any of that. So it gets back to that notion that it comes down to, again, mentality from Patrick Williams, and then somewhat as well as Billy Donovan being more intentional about how he uses the power forward in his system. And yeah, I guess we'll see what happens with that one. But great voicemail, R-Dub. I love that you called in and pointed out the use of the power forward in Billy Donovan's system, because that's a lot of things that people don't look at either. All right, let's get into the last voicemail for today. This one's from Shay.
What's up, hey? This is Shay. Look, man, I want you to do me a favor. Pay attention to the very first game of the Chicago Bulls versus the New Orleans Pelicans. If we come out and we dominate that game and we win, trust me, and then Booch or Zach becomes the big players in that game, trust me, that team is probably gonna either try to get 1 or 2 of those guys, because it's gonna show them that they really need some more hands on deck, especially on deck with Zion Williams and with DeJounte Murray. And I know what you're saying, oh, Shay, it's 82 games in the season. Yes, it is, but that game, based off of what the New Orleans Pelicans need, and judging by that's the thing that those 2 guys are tied to, I think that's the game that you really need to look out for the most, because that will predict on whether New Orleans, because let's face it, New Orleans is looking to make the playoffs. They're not looking to rebuild. But New Orleans needs more pieces, needs another big man and good scoring, and it tells you whether or not they're going to look to go all in on Zach LaVine or get Nikola Vucevic, which could be for the cheap, like 2 second-round picks. That game tells it all between both teams and what they need to do. Anyway, tell me what you think. Peace.
All right, I'm sorry, Shay, you said it in there. One game isn't going to dramatically change how a team looks at players. It's just not. That's fan mindset. Teams have years of data. And if you think that teams are going to overlook years of data because of one performance against your team, no, they're not going to do that. Now, they may factor in things that they got to see up close and personal, and that may add some to the data that they're looking at. But keep in mind, we have Basketball Reference. We have what's the resource that I use? Bucketlist.fans, where I can look up every possession of a player and see the video of that. If I have that at my at my fingertips, what type of data and video analytics do you think that NBA teams have? They have whole departments able to do what I do at home, and that have even more data, more videos, more analytics. So I'm sorry, one game is not going to drastically change how a team looks at players that they could be interested in acquiring. If it does, they're stupid. Right? They're stupid, not you. They are. They're bad front office if that's the case, right? Which maybe there are more bad front offices than I'm giving it credit out there, but that's a bad front office. So ultimately, I think it's this. If the Bulls are interested in Nikola Vucevic or Zach LaVine, that interest is going to be there. I don't think it's going to change after one game because, again, I don't think they're going to make those moves after 1 week into the season. They're not going to make it until closer to the trade deadline. And at that point, they'll have even more data over the course of the season. So I get what you're getting at. But again, I think that's kind of more of a fan type mindset than what NBA teams will realistically have, at least in my opinion. But you guys can let me know, as always, how you feel and what you think down below. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.